But also tonight, we are remembering Pope Francis, who died this morning in his Vatican apartment. This is a live look at St. Peter's Square, where mourners have been gathering throughout the day. Pope Francis served for 12 years as the leader of the Catholic Church. On Easter Sunday, he made his final public appearance, blessing the crowds and even making the rounds in the Pope-mobile. An aide read Pope Francis's Easter address, which called for an end to violence in a number of major conflicts and urged compassion for marginalized people and migrants. The New Orleans Archbishop will celebrate a memorial mass for Pope Francis at noon Wednesday. The service will be held at St. Louis Cathedral, and all are invited to attend. Emilia Strahan spoke with local Catholics and to the Archbishop about the legacy Pope Francis leaves behind.
He was so beloved. I mean, he made such a difference.
As parishioners left Mass at St. Louis Cathedral Monday, they reflected on Pope Francis' legacy.
Humble and humility, I think, is his message for all of us.
Catholics here in New Orleans joined people of faith across the globe, mourning the loss of their leader.
I felt like I only scratched the surface on who he was and what his legacy will be.
Most said goodbye in spirit.
It was just special to go in there and say a special prayer for him.
But New Orleans Archbishop Gregory Amond says he had a special final encounter with Pope Francis last year.
He leaned over and shook my hand and said, "It's so good for you to be here." And I will always remember that, for at least for me, as a farewell gift. In terms of his legacy, I think he will be seen as a shepherd.
In recent years, the 88-year-old battled a number of health issues. After he was released from a weeks-long hospital stay earlier this year, New Orleans-based Vatican reporter Colleen Dooley says he ignored doctors' orders to rest.
During that time in the hospital, he actually had 2 near-death experiences. This is classic Francis. He never took a day off.
Just a day before his death, the Pope made several Easter appearances, including a meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance. Dooley says this refusal to rest is part of the legacy he leaves behind.
He always wanted to be among the people.
In New Orleans and beyond, Amond says Francis will always be remembered as a pope for the people.
In my mind, his legacy will be very much, he said that God's name is mercy, and he was a very merciful man.
In New Orleans, Emilia Strahan, WWL, Louisiana.
And we are taking a look at some other reactions pouring in from local leaders and organizations. The Saints had posted this picture on X of owner Gail Benson. You remember this one? She was giving Pope Francis his own jersey with a caption that reads, "Our sincere prayers and thoughts on the passing of Pope Francis." And Congressman Steve Scalise also took to social media to say, quote, "As the first pope to be elected from the Americas, he continued the papal tradition of spreading the message of Jesus' love around the world." And New Orleans City Council President J.P. Morrell also writing on Facebook that Pope Francis will be, quote, "remembered for his dedication to humility, kindness, and peace." And tonight, Vatican officials are presiding over a solemn ritual, placing the Pope's body in a coffin that will eventually be placed at St. Peter's Basilica. The process to choose a new pope will begin in 15 to 20 days as cardinals around the world descend on Rome to vote. And once they enter the conclave, their only means of communication with the outside world, you all remember this, the smoke signals, with black indicating a failed vote, white to show they've reached consensus.
So there's not normally a chimney in the Sistine Chapel. They install one especially for the conclave, and the cardinals are tasked with burning their ballots to keep them secret, because when the cardinals are voting on who should be pope, they are supposed to be completely removed from the world.
Now, one of the major changes with Pope Francis is that he asked to be buried in a simple wooden casket. Now, previous popes have been buried in a casket of 3 interlocking coffins made of cypress, oak, and lead. Now, Pope Francis will lie in state at the Vatican for several days before his funeral. And as we mentioned, a memorial mass will be led by New Orleans Archbishop Gregory Amond at noon. That's happening Wednesday at St. Louis Cathedral. We will have continuing coverage of the death of Pope Francis and the process to choose a new leader for the Catholic Church. You can look for those updates on our website, our free smartphone app, as well as our social media pages.